Gates of Heaven is the second episode in this new season of Only Murders in the Building, and following the premiere last week, it had a lot to live up to. It's safe to say that this fun, light-hearted, yet heavy and dark story focusing on the murder of Sazz and the uncovering of who it could be developed in a way that provided new clues. With the West Tower being investigated by Mabel and Oliver, Charles taking a slow descent into madness, new characters being introduced, which are most definitely the prime suspects as of now. And also, Jan making a surprising return. Let's delve right into this episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is Only Murders in the Building Season 4, Episode 2, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Let's start by talking about Charles. Within this episode of the show, we saw Charles's immediate reaction to him finding out the news of Sazz being murdered, but also him coming to the realization that Sazz probably died because the killer thought that she was him. On the night that she was killed, she was dressed up as him, and that's also something that ties into the fact that she was his stunt double. This is most definitely the case, as in the opening section, Sazz said the line, "Me being dead is the least of your problems," insinuating that Charles is probably going to have a brush with death as the episodes go on, and confirming that he was in fact the main target. Charles was hallucinating, and he kept seeing Sazz. These moments of reflection allowed us to look inside of his mind and truly understand how he was feeling. There was a deep sense of mourning that he had, and he also felt as though he let her down by not leaving the apartment and going on the hunt to find her killer. What was interesting about this, and something that was at the core of this episode, was the fact that Sazz was somebody that would tap in for Charles and take the hit. She would put herself in danger on set, and he would stand to the side relaxing whilst she did it. Pretty much what happened in reality, because she died whilst somebody thought that she was him. But now, in Sazz's time of need, he wasn't able to return the favour. It was only at the end of the episode where, with the message that she wrote in her own blood, which read, "Tap in," where he realized that not only did he need to find the murderer of Sazz, but he needed to find the person who wanted to kill him, ultimately tapping in and taking over and making it about himself. So I think we're going to see a different Charles moving forward. There was a conversation that Charles had with Sazz on the end of the bed, which was focused around how he didn't have any friends at one point, but how she introduced him to a wide array of people, and then for 8 years he had company, all because of her, ultimately going on to call her his oldest and dearest friend. I think this was just a really sweet moment. Jan also returned to Charles in this episode of the show, and she said that the only reason that she didn't kill Charles was because of Sazz, despite the fact that she'd been fantasizing about it. We didn't know if she was a hallucination or if she was actually there, but it turned out that she was actually there, as when the police stormed his apartment at the end of the episode, they said that she had some drawings in her cell of the messed up things that she wanted to do to him. Jan said that she received a call from Sazz about a week before she died, saying that she was worried about something. It's strange, because if Sazz wasn't the intended victim, then why would she be worried? Or was she worried because she was investigating what was going on across the road from the Arconia, and that worry was for Charles? Before she died, she did say to Charles that she had something sensitive that she wanted to speak with him about. So it could well have been what she'd discovered in the West apartment block. I feel we'll probably find out in next week's episode. I'd actually quite like a flashback episode on Sazz and the build up to her death from her perspective. But regardless, it seems like Jan has now entered the equation of the story too. Especially now that she's on the run. So could she become some kind of suspect in this wicked game? It's obvious, but you never know. The prime suspects. Within this episode, we learned of some new suspects that could potentially be behind the killing of Sazz and the attempted killing of Charles. The first that we met was Stink-Eyed Joe. He was an individual who came across as somebody that was enthusiastic, but that's most probably because he was lonely and lived on his own. There was a suspicious edge to him where he said how he viewed the people on the street as ants and that you could just pretend to crush them. One thing that is also a little bit suspicious is the eye patch that he wears. He mentioned that he wore it because of the disease that he had and that it was highly contagious, but what if that story was a decoy? We know that the shooter had a sniper and that it was fired from the West building. It's clear to see that Joe is right-handed due to the way that he leads with his right hand, and also when he was writing, the pencil was in that hand too. When a sniper is taking a shot, they close their less dominant eye and look through the scope with their dominant one, which in Joe's case would be his right eye. What if there was a bit of kickback with the shot and he got injured? Hence the need for an eye patch to cover it up. That mixed with the mindset of crushing people like ants definitely makes me think that he could be a suspect. There's also a clear viewpoint from his apartment too. The only thing that goes against him is the fact that his windows were sealed shut, But that's not to say that he couldn't have broken into Dudenoff's apartment and then opened the windows like was shown when Mabel and Oliver were in there. There was somebody that tried to get into the apartment whilst Mabel and Oliver were investigating, so maybe that was him. The apartment also never has its curtains open, so what's to say that there's even another resident that does actually live there? There's no telephone, and there was no bedding, so does Dudenoff even exist? The Sazz family and Joe said Dudenoff was there, but that could just be a cover-up of some kind. There was also a piece of tinsel that was found in there, which points towards Christmas All the Time guy being near that window at some point in recent times. What's most interesting is that Sazz knew the code to get into the apartment, and she also knew his name. The next group of suspects that we met was the Sazz family. This was a mother, father, and a daughter who quite comfortably confirmed that they were used to looking across the window and seeing everything that was going on across the road. It turned out that Inez had an existing crush on Charles, and because of that crush, her husband said that it made him question if he needed to take him out. I think that's a deliberate misleading on the show's part. Right now, I don't think they're responsible for it. I think Stink-Eyed Joe seems like the most likely suspect out of all of the ones that we met. There was also Christmas All the Time guy, but we didn't meet him other than just looking across the window, so I feel we'll probably meet the character in the next episode. The clues. In terms of the clues in this episode, there were a fair few that started to pop up. The first was the fact that the passcode to get into Dudenoff's apartment was "oh hell," but written down in number form. This showed that Sazz was suspicious of some kind of activity that was going on with the group that gathered to play the game. There was also the word Dudenoff that was written down on a piece of paper. Nobody else's name was from that building, so I wonder if Dudenoff is real, if he could be some kind of mega fan that was obsessed with Charles. From his apartment, he could pretty much just sit there and watch Charles all day like a private TV show. There was emphasis put on the fact that Charles was People magazine's 8th most loved TV cop in 1991, showing that there could be mega fans out there. There was also a note that read, West Tower, Arconia, showing that Sazz was clearly looking into something that was going on in that building. There was a number 14 on a napkin as well, which was the very floor that the residents lived on, so there is some importance there. The other major clue was the note that read, looking at Charles. This is what makes me think that she was aware of Dudenoff and the idea that he could have just been watching Charles because he was a mega fan. One thing that we need to remember as well is that the killer of Sazz has her phone and they're keeping it charged. They also know the passcode and are able to be reached, so I wonder if the group will try and reach out to them when they're in the proximity of floor 14 in the West apartment building. Alternative theories. There were a few theories floating around at the end of last week's episode about Sazz potentially faking her own death, and there was a line that could potentially be hinting towards that being the case. Within the interview that was on video, she said, "If we do get hurt, we live to fight another day," something which is teasing the fact that she could well be alive. However, I think the fact that at the end of the episode, when the luminol was put down and blood showed up, it kinda debunks that theory. Plus, we saw her being shot when there was nobody else in the room, which proves that it did happen. The show doesn't tend to play around with things like that, but it would make a good twist as long as it was done right. My review of the episode. I feel this second episode of the show followed on really well from the premiere. It wasn't as visually stunning as the opening episode, but it was one which really did lean into the comedy and dropping of clues. Something that I was pleased about. The way Oliver was patronizing Charles because he thought he was going insane was definitely the funniest moment in the entirety of the episode. Honestly, Oliver never fails to make me laugh in this show. He just comes up with these lines that make me actually laugh out loud. Steve Martin's performance in this episode was one which was also really strong. The first 2 episodes of this season have shown a vulnerability to the character like we've not really seen before, and it's showcasing his acting skills really well. There are elements of humor embedded within it, but he's mostly been showcasing emotion and grief, and it's quite refreshing to see. We've not seen loads of suspects yet, but I feel like this season is more about drip feeding us them along with clues rather than having everything given to us at once, unlike season 3. We still don't even truly know if Charles was the intended victim, and the show could twist it on its head and show us that it was in fact Sazz that was supposed to be killed. Time will tell with that, but for now, I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to occur in episode 3. So, there you have it. Only Murders in the Building Season 4, Episode 2, Ending Explained.